I read short, scary stories late at night. I instantly regretted it. The glow of the monitor was all that illuminated the room. Sarah was asleep next door, probably dreaming about, I don't know, nurse stuff, saving lives. I was doing the opposite, actively seeking out the things that made my heart pound. It was a stupid habit, reading those short, scary stories late at night. Some corner of the internet curated specifically to unnerve, but I couldn't help myself. Tonight's selection was a trio of terror, a home invasion, a haunting in the woods behind someone's house, and a malevolent phone call where the receiver only heard whispers. I scrolled through the digital pages, each one a quick jab of adrenaline. The home invasion one got to me the most. The protagonist heard scratching at the door, whispering outside the window. Simple, effective. I finally closed the laptop, a shiver running down my spine. It was just stories, I told myself. Ridiculous, made-up things. I turned off the light and slipped into bed. The house was silent except for the creaks and groans all old houses make. But then I heard it. A faint scratching sound coming from the front door. My heart hammered. I lay there frozen, listening. The scratching stopped. Just the house settling, I thought, trying to rationalize it. But I couldn't shake the image of the story I'd just read. The next day at work, my code was a mess. I kept making stupid mistakes, my mind racing back to the scratching sound. Sarah was right, I was probably pushing myself too hard. That night I dreamt of the woods behind my house, towering trees, gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers, and then a figure, tall, gaunt, standing in the shadows just like the one in the second story. I woke up in a cold sweat, the image seared into my mind. I got up and walked to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. As I looked out the window, I saw something move in the backyard, a flicker of movement near the tree line. I squinted, trying to focus. There it was again, a figure standing in the shadows, tall, thin, just like in my dream. I grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't move, it just stood there, motionless, silhouetted against the dark woods. I took a step closer and then another. The figure remained still. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice shaking. Suddenly, the figure vanished, just like that. Gone. I shone the flashlight into the woods, but there was nothing there, just trees and shadows. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding. It was just my imagination, I told myself, just the darkness playing tricks, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen something real. A few nights later, the phone rang. It was late, almost 3 a.m. I picked it up groggily. "Hello?" Only static answered. A low, hissing sound that sent a chill down my spine. "Hello?" I repeated louder. Then a voice, faint, distorted, barely audible above the static. It whispered. I slammed the phone down, my hand shaking, my mind raced. It was just a prank call, I told myself. Some idiot with nothing better to do. But then the phone rang again and again. Each time the same static, the same distorted voice. Sometimes it whispered words. Sometimes it just hissed. I unplugged the phone, but I could still hear the ringing in my head. I was losing it. I told Sarah about the scratching, the figure, the phone calls. She listened patiently, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Mark," she said gently, "you're stressed. You need to get some sleep. Maybe talk to someone." I knew what she meant. A therapist. She thought I was going crazy. I tried to explain, to make her understand what I was experiencing. But she just shook her head. "It's all in your head, Mark," she said. "You need to relax." I felt isolated, alone. I needed to talk to someone who would believe me, someone who understood the strange and unexplained. I called David, my best friend since childhood. He was a history buff, obsessed with local lore and legends. If anyone would understand, it would be him. "David," I said, "I need your help. I think something weird is going on." I told him everything, the stories, the scratching, the figure, the phone calls. He listened intently, his silence unnerving. "Interesting," he said finally. "Do you remember those disappearances back in the 70s? "What disappearances?" I asked. "A bunch of people went missing from this area, never found. There were rumors, whispers of something in the woods." He told me about local legends, dark stories passed down through generations. Stories of ancient rituals, of sacrifices, of a malevolent presence that dwelled in the woods. "This area has a history, Mark," he said. "A dark history." I felt a shiver run down my spine. He wasn't reassuring me. He was fueling my fears. "There's an old woman who lives down the street from you," David continued. "Hawthorne, I think her name is. Mrs. Hawthorne. She knows a lot about the local history, might be worth talking to her." I'd seen Mrs. Hawthorne before. She was always outside, tending to her garden, watching the street with her piercing eyes. I always felt uncomfortable around her, like she knew something I didn't. The next day I saw Mrs. Hawthorne in her garden. I hesitated, then walked over to her fence. "Mrs. Hawthorne," I said. She looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. They were old, wise, and unsettling. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice raspy. I was wondering if you knew anything about the local legends," I stammered. "The stories about the woods." Her eyes narrowed. "The woods remember," she said cryptically. "They remember everything." "What does that mean?" I asked. She just smiled, a chilling, unsettling smile. "Some things are best left forgotten," she said. "Don't go looking for trouble where there is none." She turned back to her garden, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, feeling uneasy. She knew something. I could feel it. The events escalated. Objects moved on their own. Doors slammed shut. I saw shadows in the corners of my eyes. The phone calls continued, the whispers growing louder, more distinct. "You can't hide," the voice hissed. I was losing my grip on reality. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I started locking all the doors and windows, barricading myself inside. One night, I woke up to find Sarah standing over me, her face pale. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling, "there's someone in the house." I jumped out of bed, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and crept through the house, Sarah following behind me. We searched every room, but there was no one there. The doors were locked, the windows were closed. "I swear I saw someone," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "In the hallway, standing there, watching us." "What did they look like?" I asked, my heart pounding. She hesitated. It was like a shadow, a tall, thin shadow." I froze. That was the figure I had seen in the woods. But Sarah continued, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't just a shadow, it was distorted, like it wasn't human. She had seen it too, but she had seen something different, something worse." "Mark," she said, her eyes wide with fear, "I think you need help. Real help." I knew she was right, but I couldn't go to a hospital, to a therapist. They wouldn't understand, they would just lock me up. I had to confront it, I had to stop it. I remembered Mrs. Hawthorne's words, "The woods remember." I had to go into the woods. I grabbed a backpack, filled it with supplies, a flashlight, a map, a knife. I also grabbed the stories I had read online, the ones that started all of this. Sarah tried to stop me, but I pushed her away. "I have to do this," I said. "I have to stop it." I ran out of the house and into the woods. The woods were dark and menacing. The trees towered above me, their branches clawing at the sky. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. I followed the map deeper and deeper into the woods. I could feel its presence, watching me, waiting for me. Finally, I found it. An abandoned cabin hidden deep within the trees. It was exactly like the cabin in one of the stories. A dilapidated structure, its windows boarded up, its roof sagging. I hesitated, then pushed open the door. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with cobwebs and dust. The air was heavy with a sense of dread. I shone the flashlight around the room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, painted in what looked like blood. There were remnants of past rituals, candles, bones, strange artifacts. I felt a presence in the room, a cold, malevolent presence. It was there, waiting for me. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the dark, empty cabin. The flashlight flickered, then died. I was plunged into darkness. I heard a voice whispering in my ear. It was the voice from the phone calls, but it was closer now, more distinct. "You can't escape," it hissed. I felt a hand on my shoulder, cold and clammy. I screamed and spun around, swinging the knife. I hit something, a solid mass. The voice screamed, a high-pitched, piercing shriek. The flashlight flickered back on, revealing the entity. It was a grotesque creature, its form shifting and changing. It had the face of the figure I had seen in the woods, but it was twisted and distorted, inhuman. It lunged at me, its claws outstretched. I screamed and fought back, slashing at it with the knife. The entity was strong, powerful. It knocked me to the ground, pinning me beneath it. "You belong to us," it hissed. I struggled, trying to break free. I remembered the stories I had read, the weaknesses of the entities. I knew I had to use that knowledge to defeat it. I focused my mind, channeling all my fear and anger. I remembered the symbols on the wall, the rituals that had been performed in this cabin. I used that knowledge to weaken the entity, to break its hold on me. The entity screamed, its form flickering and fading. It released me and staggered back, its eyes burning with hate. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the flashlight. I shone it on the entity, focusing all my energy on it. The entity screamed again, and then it vanished. Just like that. Gone. The cabin was silent, except for my ragged breathing. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my body trembling. Then I heard a voice outside. Mark, it was Sarah. She had found me. I stumbled out of the cabin into her arms. She held me tight, her body shaking. I was so worried, she said, her voice choked with tears. I thought I had lost you. I looked back at the cabin. It was still there, silent and menacing. But the entity was gone, or was it? The police arrived, investigating the disturbance. They searched the woods, the cabin. They found nothing. No evidence of an entity, no sign of a struggle. They looked at me with suspicion, like I was crazy. They thought I had imagined it all. Sarah tried to explain, to convince them that something real had happened, but they didn't believe her. They took me to a hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. I told them everything, but they just nodded and wrote things down in their notebooks. They said I was suffering from a mental breakdown brought on by stress and lack of sleep. They said I needed medication, therapy. Sarah took me home, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't believe me anymore. We moved away from the town, hoping for a fresh start, but the unsettling events continued. Subtly, quietly, but they continued. A whisper in the phone static, a fleeting glimpse of the figure in the woods, a feeling of being watched. I tried to ignore it, to move on with my life, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows. One night I was browsing the internet. I stumbled across a new website filled with short, scary stories. I hesitated, then clicked on a link. The first story was about a man who was haunted by a malevolent entity. The entity followed him wherever he went, tormenting him, driving him to madness. I closed the laptop, my heart pounding. I knew what was happening. The cycle was starting again. I felt a glint of something twisted and dark inside me. I opened the laptop again and began to read.